Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today I will be talking about the latest Warriors Den. I don't usually do these types of videos, but I think it's important that I make this one now. The reason for that is, Stefan, who is I think the leader of the fight team, appeared on this dev stream to talk about balance to kind of follow up after last week where Pope asked for feedback. So what we got was about 50 minutes of talking about balance, the fight team's priorities, the biggest issues that the team is trying to tackle, character balance, and later on Q&A. I will not be showing you guys the entire 50-minute segment of the stream, obviously, but what I will do is I will showcase the most important parts of it with clips for context, and then I will tell you guys my opinion. So first, Stefan talked about the three biggest issues that the fight team is trying to deal with right now, the three biggest priorities.
Okay, so top three from a fight system improvements perspective. What are the top three problems? For me, they are reaction reduction, revenge when outnumbered, or when not outnumbered, and targeting problems. Does that make sense?
And then he goes on to explain what those three mean. Basically, the first one refers to how weak offense is overall. This does not mean every character's offense is bad, mind you, but that the kind of default offense that every hero has, 500 MS lights, obviously in a lot of cases there is still 600, but that's a topic for another day, simply doesn't work at a reasonable level. Light quote-unquote openers don't actually open anyone up, and so in order to help every hero at the same time, the fight team will be making changes so that offense is strong universally. Now, Stefan mentioned no specifics, but he did give a few hints. Improving light openers overall and making feints more believable would make mix-ups overall stronger across the board for all characters. What this might be alluding to is the radar test that Ubisoft were doing in the open beta of Marching Fire, where his heavies were, like 33 or 66 ms quicker, and that caused a bunch of changes where Raider would get heavies of guard break and stampede charge, but I do believe they might be referring to that. Simply making all lights quicker to get every character strong twos by default, and making feints a little bit better to make it easier to get into chains, which is where a lot of characters like the Orochi that Stefan mentioned shine. This is a really big announcement, I guess you could call it. It's very important, and I think people will probably overlook it or think of it negatively. Some of the arguments that I'm sure some people will be making are things like, well, what about console? What if I'm not very good? What if I'm playing Lawbringer or Raider, characters without quick attacks? I'll go through those really quick now. Basically, starting from the last argument, don't play a bad character if you want to win. Now, I know this sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. If you're having fun with whatever character it is, that's fine. Play that character. But For Honor has always had this problem where the worst characters are so much worse than even the mid-tier ones, let alone the top tiers. And that is an issue. But we shouldn't stifle the progress of the entire game just because characters are bad. Instead, we, or Ubisoft, should strive to make those characters better. Give them strong movesets, give them good tools. So what if I'm not very good, or if I'm playing on console? And to this argument I say, it's the same for your opponent. If you cannot react to 500 MS lights, whether it be now or after the global change to make them better, the chances are your opponent cannot do that either. Utilize reads, use your own offense against him, don't try to defend perfectly if that is what you're trying to do. Play a bit less passive and that will do wonders, I promise. And if you're worried about 400 MS lights becoming better, they really will not, because they are already unreactable. So even if they're made quicker, that really will not change that much. So again, if you're wondering what's going to happen on console with those 400 MS lights, well, the same thing that's going to happen on PC. They're just going to be even more unreactable, but that's not actually going to change that much. The biggest change would be to 500 MS lights. But alright, let's move on. Another big issue that the fight team are working on is revenge. Specifically, that you can get revenge in, for example, 4v1 situations. And I don't mean 1v4, I mean 4v1, when you're the one ganking. Revenge in its current state also makes bashes, like Warlord's Headbutt and Crushing Charge or Conqueror Shield Bash, much weaker in 1v1 scenarios in Dominion or Breach, which creates a problem of, as per usual with For Honor, offense being weak. Even offense that you would think would be good, just doesn't really work at a high level in 4v4. Even offense that's good in duels doesn't work at a high level in 4v4 sometimes. So what I'm hoping this all means is that you will not get revenge in non-outnumber situations anymore. 1v1s, 2v2s, etc. Which would be great and I would be very happy. This is a change that has been needed for almost 2 years now, so it's nice to see the devs finally catching up with what the game actually needs, or needed it 2 years ago. Problem is, there was no mention of a visible revenge bar, which has also been a much needed change for almost 2 years. And I find absolutely ridiculous that it's not in the game yet and doesn't even seem to be on their radar in any way. The third and last big issue that the fight team is trying to work around is the target system. I'm sure you all experienced this problem where you're in a 1v3 and you simply cannot lock onto the person that's furthest away from you. This decides competitive games at the highest level and is overall extremely frustrating, as it means you, for example, cannot deny a revive that's happening in the background. You cannot chase someone down, you cannot stop an execution, etc., etc. Hopefully changes to the system will come soon, but this is Ubisoft, so I'm not hoping for much. Just to end this segment, we did get this amazing quote from Stefan, which I greatly appreciate.
Across the board, like, you never say to someone, hey, the best answer is like do your 500 ms light. Like, I know there's a bunch of people who talk about light spam, but please watch those tournaments. If you believe light spam is amazing and unstoppable and whoever attacks first is going to win, please enter one of these tournaments and win it and then tell me I'm wrong. But you're not going to see light spam at that level. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, yep. When I was restreaming this stream today, or whenever this video goes up, on the day of the stream, I was streaming this, and I just started laughing when I heard this, just because it's so refreshing to hear a dev say that, say what we've been saying, or what competitive players have been saying for 2 years now. And it doesn't matter whether it's on console or on PC. Light spam isn't really an actual strategy. All right, so let's move on to the next part of the segment.
Maybe we'll be able to show you that at some point.
Right.
But
we're expecting it to come in season 9.
Yes. Oh, yeah, we're allowed to announce it. We agreed on something.
Just friggin' said it.
Oh. All right, season 9, Shugoki improvements.
Yeah.
Shugoki Rework confirmed for season 9. Unfortunately, there aren't really any details. It's just nice to know that it's going to happen. I'm not sure when exactly it's happening. Is it beginning of the season or maybe later? That wasn't made quite clear, but either way, it should happen in season 9. After this, they go on to talk about Lawbringer, another character that has been in dire need of a rework. The argument for fixing Shugoki first and not Lawbringer was that Lawbringer is actually good at something. He's very strong in 4v4, even now after the bomb nerfs. Well, in Dominion at least, not in Breach, but either way, that was the argument, and I can kind of understand that, although I'm not quite sure why the limit of character changes is now just down to 1 per season, but what do I know. Stefan and Pope then go on to talk about how they do watch tournaments, they see which characters do well there, and they most definitely see which characters just don't exist at a competitive level. They also suggested that they would be showing a greater variety of player skill in the next balance post, rather than simply making it about only mediocre players. But I'm not sure if that's exactly what they meant. We will see next week when the balance post is actually out. Next, Stefan mentioned PK, and she might get a damage buff soon, which is nice as she needs it, but he did also say that Valk isn't getting anything anytime soon, so that's very disappointing as she's an extremely mediocre hero, not viable in any mode. It was also confirmed that the fight team are looking at Warlords and Shinobi's running bashes, I guess you could call them, Crushing Charge and Slide Tackle respectively. That's good. However, the part that irks me is that they also said they're okay with not compensating in any way for nerfing those bashes heavily, and I find that a bit ridiculous. I can somewhat understand with Shinobi, who needs big changes and simple number adjustments aren't going to do much, but with Warlord giving him a bit more damage, making his headbutt a little bit better by, increasing tracking and maybe the range, maybe making his zone undodgeable. All of these things will at least somewhat, not fully of course, but at least somewhat compensate for the effective removal of Crushing Charge in 1v1. I'm not a fan of intentionally gutting characters and not helping them in any way. Next up is the Q&A. They look at a bunch of Reddit comments from the posts I addressed in my video the other day, so you know my opinions on a bunch of those topics. I'm not too interested in a lot of the things that were said, and some of them, like Stefan talking about light spam, are things I've already talked about in this video. There will be a link to the vault in the description if you're interested in hearing the devs talk about it word for word, but I don't want to make this video too long by talking about things I've already mentioned. However, something that I do want to talk about is this clip.
So, where we are right now, like, we're hesitant to try to bring up a very fast nerf or buff schedule, as you're talking about, like changes every 2 weeks or whatever. We don't want to see a ping-ponging of heroes. There are some that we've gone through and like I want to say season 3 and 5 and so on, or just the lead up to 5, where you'd really see a hero go like big nerf, big buff, big nerf on the same move every couple or every patch, right? Back to back. And it's like, is this move good? Is this move bad? Is this good move? I haven't adapted yet. We don't really know for sure, like anybody, if it is good or bad or whatever. And it's just in flux. And then it's not you determining if the move is good or not, or useful or not, or viable or not. It's, we put something out there, we didn't like one snap decision, and then we flip it back the other way, we flip it. It's just not good for anybody, I think. I think there needs to be an expectancy on the player side that, like, if I invest my time into learning a certain thing, it will be more or less in this path. And especially once we do make a change, that we have some expectation that, like, we believe it's correct, or at least better. We believe we're moving in the right path. We can still be wrong, and we can still go the other way, for sure. But I don't want to be like certain other games where it's like, this week it's like this week it's like this week it's like this week. I'm like, okay, well, this week it was fun, this week everything sucks. And
I wanted to let you guys listen to this clip in its entirety. I'm sorry for it being long, but I wanted to make sure that you guys get the entire context, so you don't think I took something out of context. I find this line of thought baffling, to say the least. I understand if what Stefan was talking about was, for example, waiting a month after huge changes to make another big change after the dust settles and there's a consensus. But the need for a quicker updates isn't really about that. It's about, hey, we cannot rework this character right now, but here's some small changes to help them in the short term before we get to them in a few months. That one character that Stefan was talking about was Warlord, I assume. Remember how the devs removed Warlord from the game for a few weeks? Yeah, those are not the changes I, or I think anyone else, want. The changes I want are damage adjustments, speed increases if possible without having to change animation, recovery changes, a bunch of things like that. Those are not going to make bad characters broken. They're not going to make you have to change everything about the character every week. They're going to make the game's balance a little better while vastly improving the player enjoyment. I do agree that it's smart to take your time, but I don't agree at all that we needed a year to nerf Nobushi's zone attack, or a year and a half to nerf PK's damage, and I think it's ridiculous to think that we did need that much time. And those are the changes I would like to see, not huge reworks every other week. There are last 3 things that were mentioned that I would like to briefly talk about. First of all, Stefan talked about not wanting to increase stamina and HP pools due to not wanting to prolong fights and things like that. I do agree that increasing health pools or lowering damage is a big change that needs more consideration, but I believe stamina pools should be overall buffed. As long as zone attacks and rolls still take as much of the stamina bar as they do right now, this would only benefit For Honor. Remove the stamina cost of getting blocked, of whiffing, drastically lower the stamina cost of fainting, and now we've got a game where we can press more than 2 buttons without going out of stamina. Second of all, the devs are okay with Nusha deflect being blockable and deflectable, which I find extremely confusing. A correct read like deflect should never be punished with another deflect or simply no damage. I don't really have that much more to say here, I just think it's very weird. And lastly, Stefan talked about a dedicated zone button on controller and how it's not going to happen. Instead, some changes the team are testing right now would allow more leniency in the zone input, making it easier and more consistent. Right, so that's about it for this Warriors Den. I think it was pretty big, it was definitely overall a positive, but I am very disappointed by the amount of things that were not mentioned. Making Breach playable, nerfing Shaman ganks, improving UI outside of simply saying, yeah, we've started prototyping a better skull for breaking, and so many more things. We simply got nothing about those, and it's a huge shame, since a big hope in the community was that now, after Marching Fire is finally out, Ubisoft will be able to focus on balancing and improving their game, instead of adding a bunch of new characters and modes, but that unfortunately doesn't seem to be the case. Either way though, what we did get was good. Shugoki Rework, overall offensive buffs, revenge changes, improving the lock-on system. Those all sound positive and I can't really complain about them too much. So thank you guys for watching, leave a like if you enjoyed and comment what your thoughts are down below. See you guys next time.